August, a dedicated husband notices his wife's increasing rejections of intimacy. Despite his attempts to be understanding and patient, the pattern becomes undeniable. The emotional distance grows, as "not tonight" becomes the predictable response to his advances. His self-esteem begins to crumble as he questions what changed in their once passionate relationship. Little does he know that this rejection will lead him on a journey of self-discovery and transformation that will completely redefine his life. Before I continue my story, where are you watching from today? Hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever felt taken for granted. I met Sarah on a perfect summer evening at my buddy's backyard barbecue in Austin. The Texas sunset painted the sky orange as our eyes locked across a crowded patio. Her laugh carried through the humid air, instantly drawing me in. Something about her energy felt magnetic, and within minutes of introducing myself, I knew there was something special between us. Our connection was immediate and powerful. We talked until everyone else had left, exchanging stories about our childhoods, our dreams, and our perspectives on life. By the end of the night, I had her number, and by the end of the week, we were inseparable. Our romance was a whirlwind that swept through both our lives, changing everything in its path. At 32, I had built a decent career as a software developer. Nothing extraordinary, but I made enough to live comfortably and save a little each month. My 2-bedroom apartment in South Austin had become our default hangout spot, where we would cook dinner together, binge-watch shows, and talk about our future until the early hours of the morning. After 18 months of dating, I proposed during a weekend trip to the Texas Hill Country. The small vineyard where I dropped to one knee became the backdrop for what I believed would be the beginning of our happily ever after. Sarah cried as she said yes, and the next 6 months were a blur of wedding planning and shared excitement. Our first 2 years of marriage were everything I had hoped for. The passion between us was undeniable, our connection deep and meaningful. We communicated, openly supported each other's goals, and built what I thought was an unshakable foundation. Every morning, I would wake up beside her, feeling like the luckiest man alive. I took my role as husband seriously. I worked hard to advance my career, taking on extra projects and learning new programming languages to increase my value at the company. I wanted to be the provider, the protector, the partner Sarah deserved. When she mentioned wanting to move out of our apartment into a house with a yard, I dedicated myself to making that happen. Within 3 years of marriage, we purchased our first home in a quiet suburb north of the city. It stretched our budget, but seeing Sarah's joy as she planned each room made every dollar worth it. I handled all our financial responsibilities, the mortgage, utilities, insurance, and investments, wanting to spare her any stress or worry. Looking back, I can see that taking on this role established a pattern that would eventually contribute to our downfall. But at the time, it felt right. It felt like love. Around the 3-year mark of our marriage, small changes began to appear in Sarah's behavior. They were so subtle at first that I barely noticed them. A slightly shorter good morning kiss, less enthusiasm when I came home from work, more time spent scrolling through Instagram, and less time curled up beside me on the couch. I dismissed these observations as the natural evolution of a relationship. After all, the honeymoon phase could not last forever, right? But then came the first few instances of rejected intimacy. "I have an early meeting tomorrow," she would say. Or, "I have a headache." Or simply, "Not tonight. August, I am exhausted." Each excuse seemed reasonable enough on its own, and I prided myself on being an understanding husband. I never wanted to pressure her or make her feel uncomfortable. So instead, I compensated in other ways. I bought her expensive jewelry for no special occasion. I planned weekend getaways to luxury resorts. I surprised her with designer handbags that made her squeal with delight. While our physical intimacy waned, Sarah's social circle expanded. She joined a local yoga studio and made a new group of friends that somehow never included me in their gatherings. "It is just girl time." She would explain, though, social media posts sometimes revealed men in these outings too. When I asked about joining, there was always a reason why it would not work out. I attempted to reconnect through planned date nights, reservations at upscale restaurants tickets, to shows she mentioned wanting to see, even cooking elaborate meals at home with candles and wine. She would participate, but something felt different. The spark in her eyes when looking at me had dimmed. 6 months into this subtle shift, I finally expressed my concerns during a date night at home. "I feel like we are drifting apart." I admitted, my voice tight with emotion. "Like you are pulling away from me." "Did I do something wrong?" Her response cut deeper than I expected. "You are being dramatic. August. People change. Relationships evolve. Stop being so needy." The dismissive tone left me confused and hurt, questioning if my feelings were valid or if I was indeed being unreasonable. That night marked the first major fight of our marriage, and as I slept on the couch, I could not shake the feeling that something fundamental had changed between us. As the months passed, "not tonight" became a phrase I heard with increasing frequency. What had once been occasional rejections transformed into a predictable pattern. I began to feel anxiety about initiating intimacy, my stomach knotting with the anticipation of rejection. Each no chipped away at my self-confidence, leaving me wondering what had changed and why I was no longer desirable to my own wife. In desperation, I tried to make myself more attractive. I purchased new clothes, started using expensive cologne, and joined a gym where I worked out 5 days a week. I changed my hairstyle, whitened my teeth, and even bought self-help books on rekindling marital passion. My efforts consumed my thoughts and drained my bank account. Rather than appreciating these attempts, Sarah seemed irritated by them. "You are trying way too hard," she commented one evening after I returned from a shopping trip with new shirts. "It comes across as desperate, and honestly, it is a turnoff." Her words stung, leaving me more confused about how to bridge the growing gap between us. While examining our credit card statements one afternoon, I discovered an unsettling pattern. Sarah's spending had increased dramatically over the past year. Expensive lunches, clothing from boutiques I had never heard of, spa treatments, and weekend retreats with her new friends dominated the statements. When I gently brought up the subject of budgeting, she became defensive, accusing me of trying to control her. Desperate to save our marriage, I suggested couples counseling. "We need help communicating," I explained, trying to frame it as a mutual issue rather than placing blame. Sarah immediately refused, calling the idea ridiculous and stating that only failing marriages need therapy. Her resistance only confirmed my suspicions that something was seriously wrong. As rejection became the norm, rather than the exception, my mental health began to suffer. I developed insomnia, lying awake at night, listening to Sarah's peaceful breathing beside me, wondering how she could sleep so soundly while I was drowning in confusion and pain. Depression crept into my daily life, making even simple tasks feel overwhelming. I began to withdraw from friends, embarrassed by the state of my marriage and my inability to fix it. My longtime friend Jake noticed the change in me during a rare happy hour I attended. "You do not seem like yourself," he observed, as I stared into my untouched beer. After some prodding, I confessed the situation, expecting him to offer the standard "all marriages have rough patches" platitude. Instead, his response shocked me. "August, what you are describing sounds like emotional abuse," he said quietly. "She is systematically destroying your self-worth while taking advantage of your resources. This is not normal or healthy." His words echoed in my mind for days afterward, forcing me to confront a possibility I had been avoiding. Perhaps I was not in a rough patch, but in a toxic relationship. My suspicions about our financial situation reached a breaking point when I discovered hidden credit card statements in Sarah's desk drawer while looking for a postage stamp. 3 separate credit cards, none of which I knew existed, all maxed out with balances totaling over $27,000. Designer clothes, five-star hotel, stays first-class flights, all hidden from me while I worked overtime to support our lifestyle. Heart racing. I confronted Sarah that evening, statements in hand. Rather than showing remorse, she turned the situation around on me. "If you made more money, I would not need separate cards," she snapped. "Besides, I deserve nice things. Do you expect me to live like a pauper just because you lack ambition?" Her words sliced through me. Despite my dedication to providing for us, she saw me as inadequate. Before I could process this revelation, she launched into a new demand. She wanted a bigger house in a more prestigious neighborhood. "Everyone from yoga has beautiful homes," she complained. "I am embarrassed to host gatherings here." Desperate to please her and somehow fix our crumbling marriage, I took on a second job, remote software development work I could do on evenings and weekends. The additional income would help with the secret debt and potentially fund the move she wanted. Perhaps I thought naively meeting her material desires would rekindle her affection for me. The toll on my health was immediate. Working 70 hours a week left little time for sleep or self-care. I gained 20 pounds, developed constant heartburn, and had dark circles under my eyes that no amount of rest seemed to cure. Meanwhile, the physical aspect of our marriage had completely disappeared. Sarah no longer even offered excuses. She simply turned away when I entered the bedroom. After 6 months without any physical intimacy, I made one last, desperate attempt to discuss the issue. I prepared carefully, choosing a pleasant weekend morning when we were both relaxed. "Sarah," I began gently, "it has been half a year since we have been intimate. I feel disconnected from you. Can we talk about what is happening between us?" Her response shattered what remained of my self-esteem. Looking me up and down with unconcealed distaste, she shrugged and said, "I just am not attracted to you anymore. August, people change. You have let yourself go. I cannot force desire that is not there." The cruel irony that my deteriorating appearance was directly linked to working myself to exhaustion for her benefit went unmentioned. I swallowed my response, too defeated to defend myself. Sarah's 30th birthday was approaching, and despite everything I wanted to make it special, perhaps a grand gesture would remind her of the love we once shared. I took 3 days off work, coordinated with her friends for a surprise party, and spent $3,000 on preparations, including the diamond bracelet she had been hinting about for months. The day before her birthday, as the caterers confirmed details and the decorations waited in my car trunk, Sarah announced she was going on a girls' trip for the weekend. "Cassie rented a beach house in Galveston," she explained casually, while packing a suitcase. "We have been planning this for ages." She had never mentioned this trip before. When I reminded her about her birthday, she waved dismissively. "We will celebrate when I get back. This is important to me, August." That evening, while canceling all the party arrangements, I received a notification from our shared photo cloud. Sarah had accidentally uploaded photos to our joint account rather than her personal one. There, smiling back at me, was Sarah with her yoga friends, and a man I recognized as her coworker, Jason, his arm draped casually around her shoulders. The timestamp showed it was from a yoga retreat 2 weeks earlier. With a sick feeling in my stomach, I opened her laptop, which often synced messages from her phone when connected to our home network. The text conversation with Jason appeared immediately on the screen. "Cannot wait for our weekend away. August thinks it is a girls' trip. Lol. Bringing that little black dress you love." The floor seemed to drop from beneath me. The years of rejection, the growing distance, the financial deception, suddenly, everything made horrible sense. I locked myself in the spare bedroom and broke down completely, waves of pain and humiliation washing over me. My brother Michael found me there the next day when he came to drop off a birthday gift for Sarah. Taking in my disheveled appearance and the state of the room, he sat beside me and listened as everything poured out of me, every rejection, every dismissal, every sign I had ignored. When I finished, Michael was quiet for a long moment before speaking. August, I love you, which is why I have to ask, where is your self-respect? This woman is using you, cheating on you, and destroying you, and you are letting her. When are you going to stand up for yourself? His words, though harsh, carried the weight of truth. I had become so focused on winning Sarah's approval that I had lost myself entirely. The realization was both painful and strangely freeing. On Michael's advice, I hired a private investigator to document what I already knew in my heart. 2 weeks later, I sat in a nondescript office looking at incontrovertible evidence of Sarah's 6-month affair with Jason. Photos showed them at expensive restaurants, checking into hotels, and sharing intimate moments, all while I worked myself to exhaustion to fund our lifestyle. The financial investigation revealed something even more disturbing. For over 2 years, Sarah had been transferring money from our joint account to a personal account I knew nothing about. Small amounts each time, $200 here, $500 there, totaling $42,000 over time. Money that could have been our future, our security, possibly even children's education funds someday, all diverted for her secret life. Armed with evidence, I confronted Sarah when she returned from her weekend with Jason. I laid out the photos, bank statements, and text messages methodically on our dining room table. Rather than showing remorse or shame, Sarah's reaction was one of annoyance at being caught. "What did you expect?" she asked coldly. "You were never enough for me." Jason understands me, appreciates me. He knows how to make me feel special. "With my money," I replied quietly. She shrugged. "Your choice. What you do with this information, August. Either accept that I need more in my life than just you, or we can end this now. But if we divorce, I will take half of everything, including your retirement funds. Your choice." I stared at this stranger, wearing my wife's face, finally seeing clearly the person she truly was. In that moment, I hit rock bottom, feeling utterly betrayed, worthless, and trapped. That night was the darkest of my life. I lay awake until dawn, replaying every moment of our relationship, every red flag I had ignored, every compromise I had made at the expense of my dignity. As the first rays of sunlight crept through the blinds, something shifted inside me. A strange sense of clarity washed over me, bringing with it a realization so obvious it was almost laughable. I had been investing every resource I had, money, time, emotion, care, into someone who saw me as nothing but a resource, herself. What if I wondered I redirected those resources? What if everything I had been pouring into this one-sided relationship was instead invested in myself? The thought took root and began to grow. By the time I showered and dressed for work, I had the outline of a plan. Instead of confronting Sarah again or making desperate pleas for her to change, I would take control of the one thing I could, my own actions. That afternoon, I made an appointment with a divorce attorney, bringing copies of all the evidence I had gathered. Based on the financial infidelity and documented affair, what are my options? I asked bluntly. The attorney, a sharp-eyed woman in her 50s, reviewed the documents and looked up with a small smile. "Better than you might think. Let us discuss strategy." Over the next 2 weeks, I methodically prepared for the end of my marriage. I documented all financial discrepancies, backed up evidence of the affair, and secured my personal items and important documents. I changed passwords on my email and personal accounts, set up two-factor authentication, and created a detailed inventory of our assets. Simultaneously, I began what would become my transformation. My first step was scheduling an appointment with a therapist who specialized in emotional abuse and recovery. During our initial session, I poured out the story of my marriage, surprised by the emotions that surfaced. "What you are describing is a classic pattern of emotional manipulation and financial exploitation," she explained gently. "Your people-pleasing tendencies and desire to be a good husband were weaponized against you. But recognizing this is the first step toward healing. We explored my childhood, identifying patterns that had set me up for this destructive relationship, my father's emotional distance, my mother's conditional approval, based on achievement, my deep-seated belief that love had to be earned through sacrifice. For the first time, I began to understand why I had accepted scraps of affection as though they were feasts. With a clearer understanding of how I had ended up in this situation, I could begin the process of ensuring I never repeated the pattern. It was time to redirect my resources in a calculated, strategic way. My financial redirection began immediately. I opened a new bank account at a different institution and arranged for my paychecks to be deposited there. I maintained minimum payments on the joint accounts to avoid legal complications, but every extra dollar went to securing my future. I canceled our joint credit cards after transferring the balances to new accounts in my name only. I documented every transaction, meticulously creating a paper trail that would protect me during divorce proceedings. The second job I had taken for Sarah's benefit now funded my escape fund instead. Physical transformation became another focus. Instead of haphazard gym sessions aimed at making myself more attractive to Sarah, I invested in a personal trainer who created a structured program addressing my specific needs. I consulted a nutritionist who helped me develop healthy eating habits after years of stress-induced poor choices. The weight I had gained began to melt away, replaced by muscle definition I had never achieved before. Professionally, I sought out a career coach who reviewed my skills and experience. "You are severely undervaluing yourself," she told me bluntly after our assessment. "With your expertise, you should be earning at least 40% more." Under her guidance, I updated my resume, polished my portfolio, and began quietly exploring new opportunities. My daily routine transformed completely. I woke at 5 a.m. for a workout before work, used lunch breaks for therapy or career development, and spent evenings either working my second job or reconnecting with friends I had neglected during my marriage. Every minute was intentional, every action purposeful. I reached out to friends and family members who had drifted away during my marriage, rebuilding connections that Sarah had subtly discouraged. My brother Michael became my strongest supporter, checking in daily and reminding me of my worth when doubts crept in. I joined a men's support group for those experiencing similar situations, finding unexpected comfort in knowing I was not alone. Most importantly, I learned to set boundaries and recognize my own value, concepts that had been foreign to me for years. I practiced saying no, expressing my needs, and refusing to accept disrespect. These small acts of self-preservation gradually rebuilt my shattered confidence. When Sarah noticed the changes in my behavior and appearance, her reaction was revealing. Initially dismissive, her attitude shifted to confusion and then barely concealed panic when she realized the financial flow had changed. Credit card declined at her favorite boutique. She called me in a rage. "There must be some mistake," she snapped. "Fix it immediately." "No mistake," I replied calmly. "I closed the joint cards. You will need to use your own money for purchases now." Her manipulation tactics escalated. Tears, accusations, even sudden attempts at physical affection after months of rejection. When these failed, she tried threats, claiming she would tell everyone I was abusive, that I had driven her to the affair. I simply recorded these conversations, adding them to my evidence file. 3 months into my transformation plan, I arranged a meeting with Sarah at a neutral location, a quiet conference room in my attorney's office building. When she arrived expecting another opportunity to manipulate me, she instead found my attorney and me waiting with a carefully prepared set of documents. "This is a petition for divorce," I explained, sliding the papers across the table, based on adultery and financial misconduct. "Attached is all the evidence, including the $42,000 you diverted from our joint accounts and documentation of your relationship with Jason." Sarah's face drained of color as she flipped through the meticulous records. "You cannot do this," she whispered. "I already have. I replied. The terms are fair. Division of assets minus the funds you misappropriated. You can sign today, and we can end this cleanly, or we can proceed to court, where all of this becomes public record. My calm demeanor clearly unsettled her. She had expected begging anger or heartbreak, not this composed, strategic approach. When she attempted to argue, my attorney smoothly interjected with specific references to applicable laws and precedents. For perhaps the first time in our relationship, Sarah was not in control. She attempted one last manipulation by contacting our mutual friends, spinning a tale of abandonment and cruelty. I responded not with defensive explanations, but with factual evidence, bank statements, photos, and text messages shared selectively with key individuals. The resulting shift in social dynamics surprised even me, as former acquaintances reached out with messages of support and apologies for believing Sarah's version of events. The final blow to Sarah's carefully constructed narrative came when Jason confronted with the reality of her financial situation and the legal proceedings ended their relationship. Without August resources funding her lifestyle, Sarah suddenly seemed much less appealing to him. I found a small but peaceful apartment across town, a temporary sanctuary while the divorce proceeded. Each night, as I settled into my new space, modest but entirely mine, I felt a sense of peace that had been absent for years. The divorce was finalized 4 months later, leaving me with my retirement funds intact and free of the debts Sarah had accumulated. 6 months after the divorce became final, I barely recognized my former life. The physical transformation was obvious. I had lost 35 pounds, developed a confidence in my appearance that I had never possessed before, and adopted a style that reflected my personality rather than desperate attempts to please someone else. More significant were the internal changes. Through consistent therapy and personal development, I had rebuilt my sense of self-worth from the ground up. I understood my value was not tied to others' validation or approval. I recognized manipulation tactics instantly and had developed healthy responses to boundary violations. Professionally, my transformation had been equally dramatic. The career coaching had paid off in the form of a new position with a technology firm that valued my expertise, offering a 40% salary increase and growth opportunities I had never imagined possible. For the first time, I was recognized for my contributions rather than taken for granted. My approach to relationships underwent a complete overhaul as well. I dated casually, learning to enjoy connections without immediately seeking commitment. Each interaction taught me more about my preferences, boundaries, and needs. I no longer viewed rejection as a reflection of my worth, but simply as an indication of incompatibility. One particular connection with a woman named Natalie showed me what healthy attraction and mutual respect felt like. Unlike the constant anxiety I had experienced with Sarah, time with Natalie felt easy and genuine. We moved slowly, both prioritizing open communication and clear boundaries. When she expressed interest in something, I no longer felt compelled to provide it immediately. Instead, we discussed expectations and found mutual ground. Several mutual friends who had witnessed my transformation reached out with apologies for having misjudged the situation. We had no idea what was happening, my friend Jake's wife told me over coffee. You seemed so happy to give Sarah everything she wanted. We thought you were living the dream life. I was trying to buy love, I replied with new insight. It was never sustainable. My response to these reconnections surprised me. Rather than harboring resentment, I felt a genuine appreciation for the honesty and an understanding that from the outside toxic relationships often appear different than they feel from within. Perhaps the most unexpected development came 11 months after our divorce, when Sarah sent a message that sat unread in my inbox for 3 days before I felt ready to open it. I am in therapy now, she wrote. My new therapist has helped me recognize some truths about myself and my behavior during our marriage. I know words cannot undo the hurt I caused, but I want you to know I am sorry for the ways I used and manipulated you. You deserved better." I closed the email without responding, not out of anger, but because no response was necessary. Her acknowledgement neither added to nor detracted from the peace I had found. Her journey was her own now, just as mine belonged to me. 1 year after signing the divorce papers, I stood in the living room of my new home, a modest but beautiful house I had purchased entirely, with my own resources, decorated to reflect my personal taste rather than someone else's. Expectations. On the kitchen counter sat the business plan for a tech startup I was launching with 2 trusted colleagues, an opportunity that would never have been possible in my previous life. That evening, Natalie came over to help me celebrate the 1 year mark of my new beginning. As we shared a meal, I had cooked our conversation flowed effortlessly between dreams for the future, reflections on growth, and genuine interest in each other's thoughts. The contrast between this healthy dynamic and my marriage was so stark, it sometimes took my breath away. Later that week, while meeting a colleague for lunch, I noticed Sarah across the restaurant with a group of friends. Our eyes met briefly, and I saw a flash of what might have been regret cross her face. I nodded politely before returning to my conversation, realizing with mild surprise that I felt nothing but a distant compassion for her. The emotional hold she had once maintained over me had dissolved, completely replaced by a peaceful detachment and genuine wish for her healing. In that moment, I knew with absolute certainty that I had made the right decision in walking away and redirecting my resources toward my own well-being. The journey from rejected husband to respected man was not a straight path. It involved deep pain, difficult truths, and consistent effort to overcome patterns established over a lifetime. Yet each step away from toxic dependency brought me closer to authentic self-respect and genuine connection. I learned that self-worth cannot be outsourced. It must be built from within through consistent self-respect and healthy boundaries. The resources I had once poured into winning approval from someone who could never be satisfied now nourished my own growth and attracted people who valued me authentically. Financial independence became a non-negotiable aspect of any relationship for me, not from a place of distrust, but from understanding its role in maintaining equal power dynamics. Transparency and clear boundaries replaced desperate people-pleasing in my interactions with others. My new relationship with Natalie developed naturally based on mutual choice rather than desperate need or manipulation. We chose each other daily with clear eyes and healthy expectations. The depth of connection possible in this environment of respect made my previous understanding of love seem shallow by comparison. One evening, my younger brother came to me for advice about a relationship he was struggling with. As I listened to him describe his efforts to please a partner who consistently moved the goalposts of approval, I recognized my former self in his words. The most valuable lesson I learned, I told him, is that we must invest our resources, emotional, financial, and time, in those who genuinely reciprocate. One-sided sacrifice is not love, it is exploitation. And when you find yourself in that situation, the most powerful thing you can do is redirect those resources toward your own growth. As I reflect on my journey now, I understand that the strength I found did not come despite my vulnerability, but because of it. By facing the painful truth of my situation, I discovered a power that had been within me all along. The power to walk away, to rebuild, and to create a life aligned with my true worth. The man who once begged for crumbs of affection now confidently offers his authentic self to the world, knowing that the right people will recognize its value. The transformation came not from changing for others, but from finally truly choosing myself. Have you ever had to redirect your resources away from someone who did not appreciate them? What changed in your life when you started investing in yourself? Instead, share your story in the comments below. And do not forget to hit like, subscribe if this journey resonated with you. Remember, Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is redirect your resources toward your own growth and healing. Thank you for listening, and I wish you the courage to choose yourself when necessary.